And what they pointed out was that roughly every 4 generations, every 80 years, America kind of goes through a reboot. And, you know, the first one was in 1776, and we became America. We rebooted away from the oligarchs who ran the British Empire. 80 years after that, in 1861, with the Civil War, roughly 80 years, 4 generations after that, the oligarchs of the South rose up and tried to turn America from a democracy into an oligarchy. We fought them back and we rebooted again. 80 years after that, the oligarchs rose up with the so-called businessman's coup, where they actually tried to recruit a Marine general, Smedley Butler, to overthrow Franklin Roosevelt. They had 500,000 men that they were ready to march on the White House and capture, kill, kidnap. We still don't know the details because FDR put a stop to the congressional investigations after 2 weeks. But apparently to take down Roosevelt, he stopped that, and he spoke about them at some length afterwards. Calling them out. In fact, he said, for out of this, this was in 1936 in Philadelphia, he said, for out of this modern civilization, economic royalists carved new dynasties. New kingdoms were built upon concentration of control over material things. It was natural and perhaps human that the privileged princes of these new economic dynasties thirsting for power reached out for control of government itself. Well, he beat them. He defeated them. And here we are again. We thought that the crisis of climate change, which literally has our country on fire right now, and the crisis of the collapse of the middle class, even though the latest economic numbers, they were just released today, suggest that the economy is back to where it was 2 years ago, or basically 2 years ago, before the pandemic. But still, the middle class is in crisis. We still have fewer than half of Americans even in the middle class for the first time since the 1940s. And this is the result of 40 years of Reaganomics. And so we thought, we Democrats, we Americans, we thought that the Democrats had a fix for this, for both these problems, for the climate change problem and for the economy problem. And this was this $3.5 trillion infrastructure legislation that the Democrats are proposing to pass through reconciliation, in addition to the roughly $1 trillion. It's actually only $500 billion of new money. A lot of it now is repurposing money from the stimulus that was passed just a few months ago. But taking this $1 trillion of new money and putting that into hard infrastructure, that's the bill that the so-called problem solvers have worked out, or at least say they've worked out. I mean, the devil's in the details. We don't have a final bill yet. So I'm still, my position is that that thing was never going to pass. It's not going to pass now. This is just the only reason that the Republicans and people like Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin are going along with this right now is to try to cause Americans to think that the much larger $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill, which also includes things like rebuilding our schools and getting people back to work and just human infrastructure as well as our physical infrastructure. They're trying to take down both of them. I mean, Donald Trump is out there saying just that little tiny, $550 billion, $1 trillion, whichever you want to call it, bill that Sinema and Manchin said, yeah, we can do this. That's a joke. And Trump's saying, that should not be passed. So I'm telling you, the Republicans and the billionaires who own them are going to do everything they can to beat this back, to fight this. And this is a time of crisis for America. And I really believe that we are now on the verge of this fourth turning. Every 80 years, we hit an economic crash, which is always brought about by billionaire overreach, whether it was the billionaires of that day. Obviously, it wasn't billions, but, in inflation-adjusted dollars. The East India Company oligarchs that we fought, the Boston Tea Party targeted and that we fought the Revolutionary War against, whether it was the Southern oligarchs, the slave owners, who we fought a civil war against, whether it was the oligarchs who FDR put in a box. And by the way, he really did put them in a box. He started enforcing the antitrust laws, and he raised the top tax rate to 91%. Or whether it's the oligarchs today. In every single case, the economy gets crashed by these greedy people, these greedy, essentially sociopaths or psychopaths. And as a consequence of that crash, you know, this is the crash happens because they are trying to acquire as much political power and as much wealth as they possibly can. And you know, when FDR, he said, these economic royalists complain that we seek to overthrow the institutions of America. What they really complain about is that we seek to take away their power. And then he added, as the crowd just went nuts, and our allegiance to American institutions requires the overthrow of this kind of power. And then he went on. I mean, this was 80 years ago. He died 76 years ago this year. He said, in vain, they seek to hide behind the flag and the Constitution. In their blindness, they forget what the flag and the Constitution stand for. Now, as always, they stand for democracy, not tyranny, for freedom, not subjection, and against a dictatorship by mob rule and the overprivileged alike. 80 years, here we are, back again, confronting these billionaire oligarchs. You know, back during the Dust Bowl, it was such a challenge. And now, you know, Sinema comes out and says, as I said, the Democrats thought that they had this $3.5 trillion deal. They thought all 50 of the Democrats in the Senate were on board. Yesterday afternoon, Kyrsten Sinema announced that she does not support this $3.5 trillion bill. This includes climate change initiatives. It includes expanding Medicare. It expands disability leave. It expands family leave. It expands elder care. It makes education at both pre-K and community college levels more affordable. All of these things. And Kyrsten Sinema just came out and said, no, I'm not going to do that. Now, you know, my personal opinion is either she's getting big money from the Koch network and the other right-wing billionaires out there, or she's figuring when the voters kick her out in 2024, which looks pretty inevitable. She is 24 points underwater overall in Arizona among all voters, and among Democratic voters. I mean, she's really, to quote, let's see who wrote this, Carrie Elevald over at Daily Kos, she's really sucking wind. She has a 23% approval rating among Democrats in Arizona right now. Compare that with Mark Kelly, her colleague, who has an 89% approval rating among Democrats in Arizona. But, you know, maybe she's going to try and pull a Paul Ryan, get a multi-million-dollar job and move he moved $7 million out of his campaign account into his little personal PAC or his foundation or outlet or whatever it was, outfit. And, you know, she's going to do one or the other, right? She's going to be rich for the rest of her life now that she has done the oligarchs' bidding. And, you know, this is just sad. And frustrating isn't even, infuriating is the word. That, you know, everybody, you know, Bernie called into the show about this last Thursday. Hey, you know, it looks like we've got this thing, you know, $3.5 billion. And now some of the Democrats in the Progressive Caucus, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeting this morning, you know, Kyrsten Sinema, if you think you're going to blow up that $3.5 trillion bill, we're going to blow up your bill, your $1 trillion bill.